NASCAR Cup Series race. Here are your hosts, Kevin Batstone, NASCAR Sky, and Jeff Davis.
Welcome back, race fans, to another episode of Mash the Gas on NASCAR Sky. Joining me shortly, Kevin Batstone and Jeff Davis. We're here to recap the Jack Links 500 over in Talladega, where Carson Hocevar got his first career win. And then we're going to go over to Jeff's old backyard over in Texas for the Worth 400. But before we get into that, Kevin, this might be an easy one, but who mashed the gas the hardest?
Well, Talladega, it's always a wild race down there. We had the big one. It definitely didn't disappoint. Probably one of the greatest celebrations I've ever seen in NASCAR history. Old Carson Hocevar, the Hurricane as they call him, led 19 laps, goes out there and gets his first win. He was super emotional, taking it all in. Sure, it's a super speedway win, Jeff, but it counts in a big way. And this kid is really, really rocking the fan base. I see a ton of 77 shirts out there. He's a personality. Good win for this kid. He's got a big, big career ahead of him.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, he's a great guy. I mean, I had my ifs about him for, a while. And after, kind of seeing him when we were in Kansas, just last week, it was really cool to see him out there with all the fans. I mean, he seemed like more accepting to have more people around him, signing autographs, pulling people in for photos. Just a really good win. And you're right. That was probably one of the coolest celebrations I'd ever seen for Victory Lane. And, I knew he was going to win a race sooner or later. I mean, he's a damn good driver. I just didn't know if it would be Talladega. And this one, we talked about this a lot with the super speedways. Sometimes it's a crapshoot. And I kind of feel that's what it was. I mean, yeah, he did run really well towards the end. But you got to remember, when the big one happened, what was that, lap 115 or something like that? He was back there in like P23. So with that many cars getting taken out up front and, so few cars really getting any damage at all, it didn't surprise me. It's Talladega. That's how this track works. But it was really cool to see him get his win, and he was super excited.
Yeah, it is just always so nice to see someone get their first win. And I think I really like Carson Hocevar. I think that he takes a little different of approach, compared to a lot of the other drivers. I mean, he seems to really embrace the fame that comes with being a NASCAR driver. And I know it's really just a difference in personalities. A lot of them are drivers like first, like they don't really care about the fame and all that other stuff. But I don't know, it's almost refreshing to see that. It just, I don't know, makes the sport just seem more fun to me, more poppin', I guess would be a good word to use for it. But yeah, it's one of those things where, when you're at, these races are going to be crazy no matter when we're going to it, whatever time of year we're there, it's always going to be crazy. And you really have to focus on capitalizing on that craziness and being, one of the last finishing drivers. I mean, it's a really good day for Alex Bowman, and that's something that he really needed. I mean, yeah, it's just Talladega. We can say it's just Talladega, but look at all the other drivers. I mean, Kyle Larson, Joey Logano, Ryan Blaney, they didn't have good days. They lost a lot of positions in the point standing. So no matter how crazy Talladega gets, it is just always going to be a part of the sport. And you got to find a way to capitalize and avoid the craziness and end up in a good position in the end.
And that's why the fans love it, Sky. They pack that place every year in, year out. The super speedways pull fans. And of course, there's other reasons for that. There's a huge party in the infield at Talladega. You had Cletus McFarland there in the ARCA race, which he almost won. Just a lot of excitement and energy around the sport of NASCAR right now. And we're just seeing a huge wave of new fans coming in. And people like Carson Hocevar are the future of this sport, and like you said, Jeff, he's great with the media. He's great with the fans. He's got a great sponsor with Chili's. Really, it's starting to feel like the old days of NASCAR where you really relate to your sponsors. How many people probably ran out to Chili's last night or are flowing in there today? We used to say, win on Sunday and sell on Monday. And that's kind of exactly what it is. It's rebuilding those relationships. And what a really, really cool post-race celebration. I didn't know what he was doing. I thought, to me, it looked like his foot was stuck, like he was trying to get up and celebrate and he couldn't get out of the race car. But sure enough, he was just trying to figure out how to get his big legs to reach down to the throttle, sit on the door, get the wheel back on. I mean, it was super dangerous what he did there. But here's what I love. I was watching the post-race media, and shout out to Steve O'Donnell, who's our new CEO. Fantastic move. I think we can all agree. Steve O'Donnell's great for this sport. Carson looked over and said, "Hey, Steve, is that going to be banned?" And Steve said, "Absolutely not."
It was. It reminded me, I don't know why, but do you remember that shot of Dale Sr. back in the day where he was literally on the track under caution.
Richmond, 1986.
Was that Richmond where he's sitting there wiping his windshield, sitting on the side of his, on the window side of his car, obviously, just wiping down his windshield, trying to get it clean because we didn't have tear-offs back then. And that's kind of what it did remind me of when I saw Carson doing that. But yeah, what a hell of a celebration. And it was just great to see. But, Dega, it was an interesting race this weekend. I mean, there were only 4 drivers in the entire field that led over 100 laps. In Talladega, Ryan Preece, Chris Buescher, Ross Chastain, and Cody Ware were all in the top 10 for 100 laps. Names that a lot of times we don't hear, a lot in a lot of the other tracks. And then the other fact that I thought was really, really cool was Front Row Motorsports. I wanted to give them a shout out. They had all 3 of their cars finish in the top 11. First time that they've ever had that done. So to be able to see Noah Gragson get a P9, Zane Smith got a P5, and Todd Gilliland got P11. So, thought that was pretty darn cool for those guys.
Yeah, they're a really good example of a team that has these type of tracks figured out. I mean, I called last week for Todd Gilliland to win the race because he's usually around. Zane Smith is also someone who's usually around at the end of these races. So whatever, they got going on over there, it's working. And I think that they do deserve a lot of credit. And I mentioned Alex Bowman, but another one I marked was Noah Gragson, because I brought him up a few times this year about just how lackluster his performance has been. So it's nice. It's like, yeah, it's just Talladega, and yeah, maybe it didn't move him. I actually think he went down still in the standings, even though he finished 9th, but it's still just a good morale boost. Like, okay, you might have had a bad few weeks or whatever, but now we're getting something going, let's keep building, get the morale up, get the team ready and get going. I thought it was crazy though. What that first or second pit stop, if I remember correctly, I mean, that was a mess. They had like how many drivers got like penalized or something. I mean, that was just absolutely insane. Pit road fumbled bad.
Big time. And I think that's a result of, what we saw with them lengthening stage 1, pretty much guaranteed a green flag pit stop. We saw Denny Hamlin, who basically was mashing the gas that whole first stage. So we're going to go up there and not try to save gas. He comes down pit road, speeds, goes a lap down, and has a whale of a time getting back on the lead lap, Jeff. I mean, it took him the whole race. He was mad at his teammate, Christopher Bell, because he was the only car that stayed out on one of those late cautions, so he couldn't wave around. And so it was a constant battle for Denny to dig out of to get back onto the lead lap. But to Sky's point, a lot of mishaps on pit road, especially in stage 1 there. And I think that's just, you have to execute on super speedways, knowing what this is, how important track position is, and how difficult it is to pass at Talladega with how much drag is on these race cars. You can't make mistakes like that and expect to recover.
Yeah, it was totally mayhem on pit road, and like you said, so many darn penalties. And Denny, like you said, he was cursing Christopher Bell, but there was nothing Christopher Bell could even do about it. So it's not like he was thinking if Bell would have pitted, maybe came in for a splash of Sunoco fuel, that he might be able to get that lap back. But that just wasn't in the cards, so it wasn't going to happen. But it was cool to see, like Sky said, see Alex Bowman get up there and get a little morale booster up there in P3. And, hey, Kyle Busch, he got his best finish of the year so far, finished in P10. So, it was cool. I knew Austin Cindric. I thought he was going to do pretty good. I had him in my fantasy lineup along with Hocevar. And I didn't think Hocevar was going to get there, but he actually earned me some points. So it was good to see that. And then, of course, I like Chris Buescher because he's just, from down the road for me a little bit too. So hopefully we'll see him do well again in Texas next week.
Yeah, Carson isn't someone that I would have probably thought would win this race, and it's only because he is just very chaotic. And usually, I guess it's working sometimes in his favor. Although if I'm Eric Jones, I know I'd be very, very upset. I know it's all just a product of that racing, but it always sucks when something like that happens and then that guy ends up going and winning. It just kind of it's like rubbing salt in the wound, because it was a pretty good run for him. I mean, it's good for all these drivers that we don't usually talk about to capitalize this, especially like Ross Chastain. I mean, I think he won stage 2, which I really thought he got too far ahead there. I was surprised that he somehow managed to make that work and nobody passed him. But that's a really good run for Trackhouse. I mean, they need, we're getting to the point where you got to start getting these points together and getting these wins and getting these stage wins, because the season ends so quick.
It comes up quick for sure. All these points are going to matter. And we saw that big one, happen there mid race. I mean, 26 cars collected in the big one there, most of which, 8 of them went straight to the garage, never returned to the track again. Somehow the 45 got put back together, was able to finish 14th. Not sure how they were able to pull that one off, Jeff. They finished better than Denny Hamlin did, and they were blowing tires every 10 laps. So, for all the folks out there who are saying Toyota Racing has this thing rigged, week in, week out. Well, Chevrolet just went out there after we've been talking, how Chevrolet hasn't been showing up. They go out there and find a way to perform. Sure, it's Talladega. You can throw an asterisk next to it. It's a super speedway. Is Carson going to go back it up in Texas this weekend? We'll see. I think the Toyotas still have the advantage on the mile and a half, but the fact remains, like Alex Bowman, great day. When you look at the overall points, Reddick is still dominating this thing with a 110-point lead. So he found a way to still not shed too many points to Denny Hamlin there. Ryan Blaney's still sitting P3, but it is unbelievable when you look at how spread out. You start getting back there, it's to 16th around the cutoff line. We're talking 258 points from first. That's a massive deficit when we get to the chase.
It's going to be tough for those guys to catch up. It really is. I mean, it's a hard year. You either have to run good or you don't. And we always talk about the big one, of course. And I know a lot of folks are kind of blaming that on Chastain because he was happened to be just, the guy right behind the 23 car of Bubba Wallace. But, guys get so stacked up when you're 2-3 cars deep and you're running in a pack like that, you can't see what's going ahead of you, 2-3 cars in front of you. We had, I think it was Ryan Blaney that was behind the one car, and then Joey Logano. Those two were trying to stick together. Logano was right behind him. And, they were nose to tail. So I don't know if there was just a little bit of a push from the Penske cars into the one, or did the one just get in the back of the 23? I honestly, I couldn't see what actually caused it other than, the one getting spun into the 23, or the 23 getting spun by the one. But, I don't think you can really point any fingers or blame at that because it's just the way this race works. So again, great race. And another thing that I was going to mention out here was the last driver that won their very first Cup race in their 91st career start, which this was Carson's 91st start, was actually Greg Biffle in 2005. I saw that yesterday in the media, and I thought that was pretty damn cool.
Yeah, shout out to the Biff. Be like Biff. Old Cletus almost got that win in ARCA. And how about Corey Day over on the O'Reilly side, getting his first O'Reilly Part Series win for Mr. H and going full-time Hendrick Motorsports in an O'Reilly car. Hasn't been done since Kyle Busch did it 20 years ago for Mr. H. So shout out to Corey Day there. A lot of first-time winners this weekend.
Yeah, and that always just, I don't know, that's what makes me when that happens, I just love NASCAR more. Like when you've seen Carson celebrating, you just feel so, I don't know, just such a love for the sport because you see these drivers and how hard they work. And so when they finally do get that first win, it's just, I don't know, maybe I'm just being weird about it, but I just think it's always so cool. It's so touching to see. I don't know if I would say the race was good. I always hate when there's a big one, especially when it's early on and it takes out so many drivers that are going to be competitive all day. Minimum, I'm sure the 5 and the 12 would have been up front competing all day. It's just always so disappointing. But like I've said in the beginning, and like I keep saying, it's just part of the sport and you got to figure out how to be around at the end. And I feel like the more you can capitalize on these things, because there are some drivers, I feel like we talk about Cindric. I feel like he's a driver who can sometimes end up on the good side of this as well, which is rare for a Penske driver because, I don't know, Penske's got to get it together. That's for sure.
They do, and they're headed to a track where they could possibly do that, if they can outrun the Toyotas. But overall with Talladega, we talked about how they lengthened the stage to shorten the final stage. The goal was to reduce some of the fuel saving. It didn't work. I mean, those guys were still running 30% throttle. The guy leading the race had to run 100%. You're not going to fix that by just moving the stage length around. I mean, sure, it did change the strategy a little bit going into stage 3, knowing it was only going to be, a short sprint to the finish, but it didn't change what they had to do in stage 1 and 2, knowing when they were going to be able to make their next pit stop. We only had 6 caution flags this whole race, which, give or take for Talladega isn't as many as we've seen in years past, 52 lead changes, but it's still, I think, a car problem here. We know that this next gen car is just, it's getting better. We know our short track package is there, our road course package is there, our intermediates are there, but the super speedway It's just, I don't know. I don't know how we fix it. I mean, Denny thinks we need to take the spoiler off, get all the drag out of the car. You know, the fear is there, then it's going to be too much speed. You know, so there has to be a compromise somewhere. And I do feel like with, Steve O'Donnell in there now, kind of calling the shots. I'm optimistic for what we can get done. You know, Steve wants to know where should we be in 5 years. And a lot of the drivers are going to tell you this isn't it for super speedway. But I think you're going to hear guys like Carson Hocevar say, hey, keep it this way. Guys like Denny Hamlin are going to want it changed back to the old style, Jeff. We're just kind of in between right now as we figure out what we're going to go and what we're going to do with this next gen car.
Well, you're awfully right about the short track. I mean, short track racing has been much better this year than it has last year. And as far as getting rid of the rear spoiler or bringing it down even more, I don't know if that's going to really, I mean, it would help with speed, but you also need that, kind of downforce to keep the back end of the car down as well, too. So it might become a safety issue. So I don't know if that's going to be the answer to it or not. But, as far as, Talladega and the number of wins, it was surprising not to see kind of Hendrick up there because they've got the most wins in the Cup Series. They've got 14 wins there. And I know this isn't anything current, but Richard Childress is right behind him at 13 for RCR Racing. And Penske's right behind him with 12 wins at Talladega. It's kind of spread out. And we see that quite often, with a lot of these different teams. And again, it's just a product of the environment. And I don't think we'll ever see anyone win as many times as Dale Sr. He got 10 wins out of it. And then behind him is Brad Keselowski and actually Dale Earnhardt Jr. So, great drivers. Jeff Gordon, he got 6 there too. So Brad, Dale Jr., and Jeff Gordon tied it up for 6. Only active driver we have right now is old BK, and he's kind of struggling. So, as far as changing the car up, we definitely need to figure it out for some of the super speedways racing. I think that the running road courses and whatnot, I think we're just fine with that. But I'm just glad that we do have that short track package. But next week in Texas, it'll be super fun.
Well, it's back to that mile and a half. I'm curious to see how that's going to stack up with, we've gone through Las Vegas, we've been through Kansas. It was pure Toyota domination. Are the Fords and the Chevys going to show up? You mentioned Kyle Busch there. He's getting a crew chief swap. I mean, we just started the season, a few weeks ago, it feels like, with Pullman as the new crew chief. Well, he's going to go, Jim Pullman, he's going to take more of an administrative role with RCR, and they're going to put Andy Street back atop of the pit box for Kyle Busch, who had some success with the RCR O'Reilly program. And, is that the answer for RCR? I mean, how many times can you swap a crew chief out before, same boss, same as the old boss? It's I don't think this is a crew chief problem, but they're going to keep moving some folks around. We'll see if it helps Kyle Busch at all this weekend in Texas. I still think they're a P20 car.
I don't think it will. I really don't. I think it's just it's just an equipment problem. I think it really is. And this is one thing I wanted to bring up and talk to you guys about, because I've been kind of laughing my ass off a little bit about this back and forth between Denny Hamlin and Kyle Busch over the last week or so. When old Rowdy told he's like, hey, I'll switch equipment with Denny Hamlin anytime, and then let's see who can actually win the race. I don't know if I would want to take that bet or not. I think Denny Hamlin would actually beat him anyway, no matter what equipment he was in. Maybe not in the RCR, but if they traded equipment, okay, maybe Kyle Busch would be able to get her done in the Toyota, because Childress just does not have what it takes this year. So, what did you guys see any of that hoopla?
He put out a list of his most hated drivers or whatever. I know Joey made the list. I seen Joey was talking about it. He's a personality. He's just the same as Carson Hocevar. And I do feel like maybe, I don't know about, you can only switch, I feel like, a crew chief so many times. I do think that it probably takes a special type of person to work with Kyle Busch. And not that there's anything wrong with that. I mean, I just think that Kyle needs a certain type of environment to thrive. And I've said that so many times. I think that at this point, you're stuck in this contract. You got to do what you got to do. At least try to make the best of it. So if you think switching is going to work, then, I mean, give it a shot. I mean, it's the same thing I said about NASCAR and, back to Steve O'Donnell becoming a CEO or whatever. He was willing to try something different with Talladega, and maybe it didn't work quite the way we wanted, which I kind of speculated that before. I think that it's good that we tried something. I don't agree, however. I think safety over entertainment all day, every day. Does it suck? Is it going to suck if the cars aren't that fast or whatever? Maybe, but I would prefer all drivers to make it through than doing something maybe risky for an entertainment sake or to make the cars faster that could risk them not going home to their families.
Yeah, I agree. I think safety always has to be the number one priority, and that's where we're at in 26. I mean, they've figured out a way to keep these cars on the ground. We see wrecks these days that they just walk away, they look fine. Not a bump or a bruise on them anymore. So we've come a long way with the safety. So that needs to be, the number one point. But I think some of these drivers, when it comes to super speedway, they just want to be able to pull out a line and make runs without having to have these huge freight trains to get a run. Because that was the problem. What Denny was saying, when you're moured in their mid pack, how are you going to move forward? There's really no way to create a run like we saw with the previous Gen 6 car. They had a lot more freedom to create those runs. And that's just a product of this next gen car. It's bulky, it's wide, it's heavy, it's got a lot of drag. And, that's just going to be a product that we're going to have to work through, throughout the years. Everyone's playing by the same rules. Carson Hocevar had to drive the same car that Denny Hamlin drove. So, it's figuring out how to win these races. And yeah, I applaud Steve O'Donnell for trying to switch something up. They are willing to give it a try, without making it too gimmicky, switch some things around. I mean, I think it'd be an interesting idea to maybe get rid of the stages altogether at super speedways, because that then takes away the guaranteed, fuel saving. How else do you combat it, Jeff? If you take away the stages, you don't know when your next caution is going to come. You almost have to run full throttle throughout. I just don't see how else you can combat sandbagging and 70% throttle without removing guaranteed cautions.
Yeah, it's tough. I think that's actually a really good idea, Kevin. I mean, if we took the stages out completely on super speedways, I think that'd make a hell of a more entertaining race. You're going to have a lot more pit strategies in there, and you are going to have guys running full throttle. Because, like like you mentioned, kind of in these cars, it's hard when you're in mid pack, and a lot of the times when you're just running, two by two, if you jump into a third lane and try to create an extra lane, a lot of times it doesn't work. Or we've seen it where someone gets in the middle and just gets dropped straight back 20 spots. And so there's a lot of coming and going there. But, to Sky's point, I agree. It's 100% about safety of these drivers. And that's another thing I think NASCAR has done a really, really good job with, as far as, look how many flaps we have on the cars these days that help keep the car on the ground. And it's just, I think NASCAR is listening. The number one, safety, like Sky mentioned. Two is they are willing to try a few things here and there to see what's going to make it work. They listen to the fans about the higher horsepower for us, the short tracks. So if they took away the stages on these, I think that'd be awesome.
Yeah. Well, the only thing, what do you mean by take away the stages? Just because where were the points coming from then? Do you mean just at super speedways? You mean in general?
Well, remember what we did at a road course a couple years ago where they still awarded points, just no guaranteed caution.
Yeah, then I'm all for that, 100%. Take away the caution part of the stages, yeah. I think that would be probably the easiest, quickest fix, or at least the next step they should try, because I know they can only do so much. Now that the schedule's already out, teams already planning, weeks in advance and everything. I can't imagine they could switch it drastically at this point. But I think that that's a really good idea, and they definitely need to look into it. I think it might even be better than, just switching up what they did this week. It might have been a better course of action.
Yeah, I think, and that's what Steve O'Donnell's here to do. I mean, he's here to listen. He's here to try things. I'm not saying that's necessarily the answer, but I just don't see how else you can combat sandbagging and pulling the throttle back. And because you're limping it. Hey, Larry McReynolds broke it down for us crystal clear. For every 10% more throttle you back it up, you gain 8 laps or whatever it was per tank. So they know the math on it. They know how they can limp this thing to the stage. Still award stage points, get rid of the caution. I think that might be an idea to go forward. Speaking of hoopla flying around there, we're going to call out Stephen A. Smith on Mash the Gas tonight. Pretty aggressive comments coming out NASCAR community last week saying that NASCAR drivers are not athletes. Obviously, NASCAR has fired back every one of them. I think Front Row put out an invite for him to come down to Talladega and strap in. When you look at the definition of an athlete, it's somebody who uses great stamina, athletic ability, and agility. And that's exactly what our drivers do week in and week out. Sure, maybe they're not running down a football field or hitting home runs, but that's not what defines an athlete. And I know we're all going to agree on this, but I just don't understand why Stephen A. had to, poke his head in this battle, because he's going to get his head chewed off, Sky.
I agree. It's just a mean thing to say. It's just like, what's the point? But I think we all joked about putting him at Talladega, but no, we need to get him strapped up for a road course. I like to see him do one of those and then try to say that these guys aren't athletes.
A road course or Bristol, something that pulls a lot of, physical energy, because Talladega was one of the least physically demanding, according to Denny and some of the others.
Yeah, the worst thing it would be trying to go and then going through the wrecks. I mean, they have to have their bodies to somewhat of enough to be able to go through these wrecks. I mean, they get tossed around. I mean, you go through a bad stretch 3-4 weeks in a row, you're DNF. I mean, imagine the toll that takes on your body. So it's just a mean thing to say. All athletes, just I don't get it, because I think cheerleaders are athletes too. I mean, how much work did they put into it? I don't know. It's just a weird thing to say. It's just a weird, mean thing to say.
That's just Stephen A. Right, Jeff? He's looking for hot take. That's what he does. He creates drama, but there's just no basis to the argument. I mean, that's like saying, oh, Tom Brady can't go out and, well, that's kind of hard part example. Tom Brady can do anything, but
Whatever.
you know what I mean? I don't think Tom Brady could hop into this race car and go win a race. I'll tell you that.
No, and these guys are true athletes. I mean, you look at what they do in their regiments. I mean, how many times did you see, Carl Edwards and Jimmy Johnson running marathons the day before a race or a day after a race? I mean, these guys, they have to eat quite a bit, and then the G force that their bodies go through on some of these tracks. I mean, a lot of them are losing anywhere from 7 to 10 pounds of weight per race. And if you weren't an athlete, you would not be able to do what these guys do. These guys do work out. It's not like they're just sitting around eating Martinville hot dogs all day long and expecting to race well. They've got regiments in their meals. They got workouts. Like, I just thought that was the stupidest thing I've heard in so long. I've heard people kind of say it in the past. It's like, oh yeah, anyone can go fast and turn left. And it's just like, it's complete bullshit. It's like you have to have a lot of stamina to be able to run these races. And then with the problems we see sometimes with failing cool suits and things like that, or, even like, Kevin Harvick, man, I remember when he got his feet all blistered up just because it was so damn hot underneath. These guys go through a lot of it. They endure an awful lot. They really do. So to say they're not athletes is pretty asinine. But that's just the way that guy is. He just wants to poke the bear, get some attention in the media, and piss people off. And that's, unfortunately, it works.
I was going to say, well, it worked because it got a lot of discourse out of us. That's for sure. I will say, though, all of the racing is hard, but I'm almost slightly convinced now that I live down here in Florida and dealing with Florida traffic and Florida drivers that I could probably race and survive Daytona. I think I'd at least survive it for sure. Maybe not win, but
it's because you got the youth in you, Sky. You could do it. I have faith.
Yeah, you go to Dallas, you go out here to Denver. It's crazy in every major city. But yeah, I mean, it is. It's like going down I-25 or, one of these major highways across the country, 3-4 wide at 200 miles an hour. I think that's the thing, is people just don't look at the sport for what it is. He said the same about golfers. Everybody has to be conditioned to their sport. They train specifically to get their bodies ready for it. That's what it is. That's all we'll say about it. I think we're all in agreement there. Jeff, we're going down to your neck of the woods, old Tejas, going down to Tejas. Great mile and a half, great racetrack. I'm excited to see Texas kind of on the rebound after their attendance, kind of dipped there for a few years. They lost a race. They tried the All-Star race. They gave one spring race now. And I think Texas puts on a good show. I really do. I think it's a great mile and a half. I love the banking. They kind of reconfigured turn one there. You got Big Hoss down the back straightaway. It's the biggest high-definition TV in the world to date, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep, that is correct. And I do love the reconfiguration they did. In turn 1 and 2, we only have 20% banking. And then 3 and 4, you've got that 24% banking, the front stretch and the back stretch, 5%. You got that dog leg in there. It's just a really fun track to go to. I think they've done a damn good job at getting it taken care of. And, if we don't see more attendance come back to Kansas, I wonder if Texas will actually get another race. But it's funny when I look at some of the facts about drivers at Texas. Like, let's take active drivers, for example. Now, I know Jimmy Johnson only runs a couple races a year, but he's got 7 wins here in Texas at TMS. And Kyle Busch is in second place with P4. Now, is he going to get, I don't think he'll get a top 5 or even a top 10 next week here in Texas. But, as far as Penske, they do pretty good. Hey, Joey Logano won it last year. Sky should be pretty stoked about that. He's got a good chance, and I think Ryan Blaney does too. I think they're really going to give those Toyotas a run for their money.
Yeah, it's definitely hard. I was thinking that I don't know if I have full faith in a Chevy. I do think it's most likely going to be a Toyota that'll end up winning. But I was also teetering with a Ford as well. But I don't have who I think, I don't know who I think is going to win. I keep looking at these numbers and it's just, I don't know. I feel like there's so many drivers that are on a hot streak right now that I could potentially pull for, but it's hard to say whether or not they'll keep going. And then the drivers that you think will do good, I mean, some of them are not doing the best right now. So I don't know. I hope you guys are having better luck than I am.
Well, I mean, we're just crunching numbers as always. I mean, we look back to last year, you'd think that Joey would be a favorite going into this race, but I just haven't seen the Penske Fords have the speed on the mile and a half just yet. So my instincts are telling me when I look back to Las Vegas where Denny Hamlin won, or Kansas where Tyler Reddick got one, I have to stick with Toyota Racing just based on the odds and the favorites. I mean, Denny Hamlin was so close to winning this race 2 years ago when it went into overtime. Chase Elliott got him by a nose. And then Denny Hamlin ended up wrecking on that green, white checkered finish after pretty much dominating this Texas race. So I know I picked him, before, and I picked him for Kansas, which he almost did win. If those cautions fell a little bit differently, I'm going with the 11 again. I think Denny Hamlin's going to go down there. It's his first time running the progressive paint scheme this year. He's going to go get a win in Texas.
The 11 in you is the new Jeff in the 5. Like, what are we going to do?
That's fair.
I was going to pick the 5 almost, but I'll tell you who later. But yeah, I was going to pick the 5 almost.
I'm calling I have a feel. I'm scared that you're going to take mine, Jeff. I think I like the Toyota pick. That's who I'm going with, the good old 20.
Sky, you totally took my pick. I was going to let you guys go. I was like, okay, I'm going to take the 20. I think he's going to get her done. But since you're going to take the 20 and Kevin's going with the 11, I'm going to go back to my old faithful then. I'm going to go with Kyle Larson since he finished P4. and otherwise, I would have picked Christopher Bell. So, yeah, that's who I'm going with. And one last thing I wanted to say, before we kind of move on here, I thought the funniest quote of the entire week was old Cletus McFarland when he was getting interviewed. And then, he got P2 out of the ARC race. And when he's getting interviewed, it's like, how was that for you? And he goes, I have never had that much fun with my clothes on. And that just made me laugh my ass off. So after that, we can go ahead and move on down here to Texas.
Well, that's Cletus, and I think what he's doing for the sport is big. I think he's right where he belongs in ARCA. He's got his, his sidekick, Squirrel McNutt, who got taken out in that wreck. But these two are characters. And, we talked about the personalities of NASCAR. And, just so happens to be Carson Hocevar is great friends with Cletus. Well, Carson was sitting there doing his media tour there. Cletus called him during the middle of that and said, hey, great job. So Cletus, he's full of one-liners, up there letting it rip like a bald eagle. I've been following his YouTube channel since 2017. It's been really, really cool to see him find success and be able to break into NASCAR. I do think he needs to stay in ARCA for a while. I think it's a little bit kind of overzealous to think he's ready for a full-time or even a part-time O'Reilly appearance just yet. But I think he can get there. I mean, Phil Parsons said it best. I mean, it's pretty impressive that he almost went out there and won Talladega after only running 6 ARCA races. And equipment, he's putting his own sponsors on that race car. I'm excited to have Cletus around, the NASCAR community. It's doing good things.
I agree. Him, Carson Hocevar, I mean, that's the type of personality, especially with the younger generation, my generation, I guess, even though I'm like on the older end of it. They're just so easily entertained by stuff like that, especially all the antics that Carson Hocevar is always doing, all of his live streams. I mean, stuff like that is really what's going to help push this sport. I mean, you got to keep getting those generations to keep it going. So, I mean, that's the whole reason I even watch NASCAR is because my dad did. So it's always good to just see them do it. It's super funny. And I just, like I said, especially I'm sure that his celebration is going to pull a lot of numbers. A lot of people who probably don't watch NASCAR week in and week out are probably going to end up seeing it. It's just a really cool thing for the sport.
It certainly is. And I'm excited where this sport is headed. We got great leadership with Steve O'Donnell. We've got great race cars. Our mile and a half package is great. Jeff, Texas, you'll be down there representing Mash the Gas. Be sure to send some stuff out for us so we can get it out to the viewers, the listeners. Of course, we'll be back next Monday night to break down all of the action from the Lone Star State. Everything's bigger in Tejas. Be sure to follow us across the board at Mash the Gas. NASCAR Sky over there at NASCAR Sky. We're going to go down there, get our cowboy hats on, eat a little bit of Barley Q, letting it rip down there. And until then, y'all,
Mash the Gas.